Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all had a nice break and enjoyed a nice lunch earlier today. So it is my pleasure to introduce our next keynote speaker of the day, Dr. Palesa Sekhejane. Dr. Palesa Sekhejane is the Strategic Partnerships Director at the Human Sciences Research Council in South Africa. She holds an MTech and DTech degree in health sciences from the University of Johannesburg and is a medical technologist specialized in biophotonics. Her current research interests are in bioeconomy policy, biosciences, biomedical innovation, and technology. She's also the co-founder and the co-chairperson of the UJ-led Maiden International Conference on Food Security and Safety. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sekhejane as the keynote speaker of today.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the warm welcome. I'm going to project my just hold on for me. Okay, good. Thank you very much for the warm welcome and introduction. And I trust it is a good day and having to talk after lunchtime. For those of you who are attending physically, I'm sure you can enjoy this presentation, or we can engage after the presentation. Without further waste of time, so I suppose upon the invitation to deliver this keynote address, what pondered in my head was the fact that particularly being based in South Africa and having conducted most of my research in Africa and policies in African countries with focus on innovation, technology. It's really quite interesting that I just need to lower this. It is really interesting that in the context of South Africa, developing technologies and creating those enabling environments, they are created, or we develop the policies with the focus to ensure that we can address the triple challenges faced with South Africa and the region. And for us, in particular, it's unemployment, inequalities, as well as ensuring that we can build economy. So that said, I think majority of you perhaps in the research of policy and innovation, you would know that South Africa has been investing in the past decade or so in building a capacity, particularly human capacity, to ensure that we can contribute towards emerging technologies. Nanotechnologies, for instance, the research in nanotechnology in South Africa started to intensify at around the year 2000. However, there's really been a misunderstanding or a question around how inclusive and well understood are these technologies, and when they are being developed, to whom do they provide service or their response thereof. So there are varying scales of investments and developments that take place in our immediate contexts with regards to emerging technologies such as nanotechnology. Of course, today we cannot talk about nanotechnology as an emerging technology because it has advanced, and particularly in countries like China that are leading on nanotechnology advancements. And so in us supporting and enabling sustainable utilization of these technologies, we require strengthened government structures, as well as collaboration with business systems or environment. So government's role have become a crucial aspect in ensuring that they can bolster the development and investment towards these technologies. And today, as we speak, the current interest from the South African government, for instance, it's really ensuring that there can be an incorporation of grassroots innovation that can make use of these technologies such as nanotechnologies. And of course, perhaps in our context as well, to bring it closer to, in case you have no idea about South Africa and Africa's context as far as nanotechnology is concerned, is the fact that majority of the focus as far as nanotechnology is concerned has been on health, but there are also a number of patents that are coming out of our country and also collaboration, but I'll refer to that later on. So in essence, the investment has not only gone into investing into the immediate research for towards nanotechnology, but also in terms of contribution towards building partnerships with other governments that will ensure that there is a regional and global representation of research that emanates from nanotechnology, and also there can be some proceeds or some benefits that emanate from investing in nanotechnology. So I suppose majority of you as the audience, you would of course know how widespread the use of nanotechnologies or its applications is. So I will not want to bog us into getting into those aspects. But I think what is of interest is nanotechnology being revered as a revolutionary innovation or technology, and of which I think majority of us in research, it is indeed so revolutionary, but then theoretically speaking. However, moving the technology into the environment, such as ours, that are volatile sometimes or not so eager to invest in research and development, I think a majority of African countries, we still are investing around just about 0.9%, under 1% of their GDP. So the social-political conditions, they do play a role in ensuring that nanotechnology can be a progressive technology and innovation step towards ensuring that our economies can be revived, but also they can be inclusive. So therefore, driving towards the sustainable development goals. I think we have seen during the Ebola crisis, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic, that there was a divide globally. So the global inequity was glaring in our eyes as a result of infrastructure, low standards of optimization, weaker human capacity or fewer human capacity, as well as noting the global north divide, the global north-south divide, particularly because of the investment and the economic gaps between the two nodes. So as a result, also, I mean, we have seen that the lack of equity in development and implementation of medical nanotechnology may manifest in other ways. And those other ways might mean that there is a slow delivery of technological developments as a result of utilization or application of nanotechnology, as well as thinking as far as the particles, manufacturing of the particles. So the industries involved in ensuring that there can be implementation or the application of the nanotechnologies. So as nanosciences or the nanoscale science has been integrated into engineering, and it is projected to transition towards direct measures with good time resolution, as well as science-based design of fundamentally new products and general, general purpose and mass use of nanotechnology. So various countries in Africa, particularly Egypt and South Africa, have been doing well as far as the R&D in the nanotechnology is concerned. And Nigeria as well being one of the countries that has progressed to ensuring that they can leverage from investing in the nanotechnology. So as a result, majority of the universities, research councils have embarked on this nanotechnology research. And majority of them as well, they thrive on collaboration. So South Africa, as a middle-income country, has been conducting nanotechnology R&D since the 2000s, as I've mentioned earlier on, and then it has been on an upscale. But of recent, there's been a dip in the investment towards nanotechnology, as well as the outputs emanating from the nanotechnology R&D. So looking really at inclusive innovation and equity implications for nanotechnology in South Africa, it really does provide an important case study, simply because it helps us understand the distributional implications of nanotechnology in poorer countries, particularly given the examples I have mentioned earlier on with the Ebola crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. So engaging in nanotechnology is quite good. It's important. It is revolutionary, as I've mentioned earlier. However, I think the contexts that we find ourselves, they're also quite important in pursuing the nanotechnology, understanding the impact of nanotechnology, not only as a technological investment or a technological advancement, but also as a technology that holds potential to bring about positive impact in our countries. Furthermore, it also resonates a lot with sustainable development goals, and as far as innovation and inclusive growth is concerned. And we can look at this from the perspective of the UN 2015 SDG framework. Additionally, technologies such as nanotechnology, they should take into consideration aspects of social justice. Therefore, pathways to inclusivity by increasing some of the opportunities for equitable wealth creation and social privileges. This is quite important because in order for us to start thinking of nanotechnology as revolutionary, the human development should be at the center of that, therefore enabling mechanisms and pathways of access to utilization and creating jobs in our countries, as well as industries or firms. So as much as we do much for investment towards nanotechnologies, with strengthening the partnership, strengthening and development of these strategies, country strategies and policies, it is also quite important to reflect and ask ourselves if nanotechnology is a promising 21st century modality of treatment, in this case, whereby we are referring to nanotechnology in health. Why do we still have challenges of countries burdened with disease, as well as the non-communicable diseases such as cancer? Apologies, I meant to include cancer there. And furthermore, as I've mentioned that with this resonating within the SDG, it touches on aspects as important as health and human development. So the nanotechnology for advancing the SDG does require design thinking models in our policies and also in our collaboration, and as well as incorporating the human or the society aspects in it. So therefore, we need to be cognizant of the inequities and inequalities existing in our systems, societies, and relationships. So it would be plausible to find ways to leverage on scalable changes or change by designing with users and designing for trust. Because again, if I may go back to the example of COVID-19 vaccines, trust was a huge issue as far as people believing that the vaccines do have an impact, vaccines can save life. So that was a hot debate. So the same applies as far as nanotechnology is concerned. So we should not only develop nanotechnology and its innovation without ensuring that there is an understanding of what nanotechnology is, as well as, I think I'm showing the wrong presentation, colleagues. Okay, nonetheless, it's not an issue. So, so nonetheless, when we look at nanotechnology and its ethics, the book by McLuhan, it does touch on the fact that you know, there is a lack of equitability in science policies for most of the countries or for most of the regions, and it's rather rather than in the science itself. So the science in itself, yes, it is plausible. However, its application in the development lenses, it can sometimes be questionable in terms of can it bring that global equity as we aspire or desire it to be. So I think as well to date, if we have to link the nanotechnology investments, looking at Africa particularly, it is quite difficult to find that it has had a tangible societal transformation, despite the rise of the patents and publications that have been produced from the nanotechnology. So I just want to show one of the data from the publication that indicates that South Africa, for instance, has had an impact when it comes to collaborating with countries like Nigeria. So ever since Nigeria has managed to collaborate with South Africa, its outputs have increased, followed by the collaboration with Egypt and Botswana. But I think it's quite of interest that it's fewer African countries that are pro-collaboration compared to the African countries that are pro-collaboration in Africa, and in trying to understand the impact of utilizing applications of nanotechnology. And this presents also a case, most likely for majority of the countries that find themselves in low resources or that are in the low income status. So as it mentions there, I mean, South Africa is one of those countries that have filed many patents, although Egypt is really one of the countries that are leading in nanotechnology in Africa. And it begs me to go back to my earlier on question in terms of, with all these investments that we put into the nanotechnology, what is that missing ingredient that can push us into sustainable transformation and ensure that we do not only just invest in nanotechnology and its innovation, but we can also see the tangible benefits for doing so. When we look at outside South Africa, India, I mean, also being in the BRICS, is one of the countries that collaborates with South Africa on the nanotechnology research. And also when we are looking at the countries that, well, even Brazil, as far as Brazil being there at the top on the left side of my view. And this is with regards to the co-publications. So I think as far as the knowledge and nanotechnology collaboration is there, and the collaboration are concerned, there is that understanding and the knowledge creation that we are exchanging at the global scale. However, this knowledge still needs to translate into that sustainable development goals, such as ensuring that there can be equitable access. Another thing that we are also noting is that we have not had an impact analysis that can show us how transformative nanotechnology is to the quality of life, particularly in our context. Therefore, as well as advancing the resource sharing, such as the infrastructure and relevant incentives are critical. So we have not seen that transformative power of nanotechnology in Africa, although the research capita is growing and collaboration. And besides the product innovation, we also need to understand what is the measure of process innovation that comes as a benefit from investing or developing and adopting nanotechnology. And also, as countries that excel in quality education, performance and outcomes in mathematics and science, we have seen that without a much crude show of data, But those countries that invest in quality education, particularly of maths and science, they do bring about the significant nanotech-based developments. So they are not only producing the patents, but they're also producing the products and firms. They are contributing towards ensuring that they can reverse the effects exacerbated by inequalities in the countries. However, in our context, as I've mentioned earlier on, we have not yet begun to see that. So essentially, how I see it, nanotechnology does not only solve health or engineering challenges, but developing problem-solving skills through teaching science, quality science for that matter, as well as research principles and creating platforms for commercialization will steer us to better outcomes. So therefore, it is quite important that the science and engineering solutions are context conscious, and also we increase the quality of education. I actually like to talk about the product and the process innovations, because oftentimes there is always that worry about technological fear, and as I've also alluded earlier on about not knowing much about technologies, to our societies. It might mean that we are held ransom, or we are not so progressive as we could be. So it is quite important that we also understand how nanotechnology can be applied in our industries without losing human capital or capacity, without adding to the burden of unemployment. But how do we encourage nanotechnology developers, users, to ensure that they're conscious of incorporating socio-economic challenges in modeling of these technologies in their industries as well? In one of the recent surveys conducted by the indicators unit in the Human Sciences Research Council, it emerged that most of the businesses, they are not even aware of the innovation incentive that is being provided. Therefore, by promoting some of the technologies such as nanotechnology, it does not necessarily have to displace human resources or human capital, but then planning can take place in the process as well. So we do need to intensify the development of projects that are pro-equitable partnerships as well, sensitive to the local context, as well as human-centric in design, therefore bridging the gaps between the developed and developing regions or countries. So ladies and gentlemen, the moral imperative to provide the essential and basic needs for all of us and to ensure that we understand the challenges that threaten humanity, and utilization of the nanotechnology can stand before us, and given that we have that knowledge, the wealth technologies, as well as rich in human capital resources and capacity. So in conclusion, or in closing, I would just like to say that, as end by the quote from Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, that the world is on the brink of catastrophic moral failure, and the price of this failure will be paid with lives and livelihoods in the world's poorest countries. This, which I'm quoting, I want to tie it with the fact that, beautiful as nanotechnology is, brimming with so much of potential to deliver an innovative, clean world, we need to be mindful that we do not fail the world by not being cognizant of the divides that we share as countries or as human beings in a global space. Thank you very much.
So now, Dr. Sekhejane, thank you so much for that wonderful talk. My name is Lisa. I will be just chairing the question and answer session of this talk. First of all, thank you for the detail and a little bit of the social, demographic, and economic implications of nanotechnology around the world, which we in Canada, we need to know more of. I'd like to open up the floor to questions, and I'd actually like to introduce you to the Oh, the Executive Director of WIN, Sushanta Mitra.
Thank you. Thank you for your very nice talk. I just want have a quick question. In terms of inclusive growth, do you see nanotechnology can play a level field, particularly in your part of the world that you are operating in South Africa and beyond? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can respond.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. I do think that it can play a role. The challenge with, it can play a role in that growth, but the challenge is that, we introduce so many technologies, and I think with governments as well, always wanting to measure per annum, their performance, the resources disbursed, what has been done. That is why one of my points was that we are struggling to attach impact of these investments and the implications of these technologies to growth, sustainable growth or development, because it's smaller firms that are able to implement the nanotechnological applications. And the effect, I think the recent 2021 or 2022 report, as far as what has been the capacity growth of those employed in the firms that employ the technologies, it has been stagnant. It has been, they looked at the data for about a decade. So I do think personally there is a potential for growth, but in an environment whereby you have poor education, it will take longer. And of course, technologies, they do evolve. So therefore you risk a chance of leaving people behind and having the technology being outdated and losing out on the potential benefits that could have emanated had you ensured that there is an overhaul of a system. There are mechanisms in place to support technical schools, for instance. There are mechanisms to strengthen collaboration from right at the bottom to the top. So sometimes we do have the support of the institution and of institutional partnerships or organizational arrangements. However, they take time to trickle down to ensure that we can see that growth. Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, thank you for your talk. You talked about the issue with distrust during the COVID-19 pandemic between people and institutions. How can we as scientists and engineers improve our relationship? Because that issue's definitely been seen like globally, especially during COVID. Thank you.
Thanks. I think one of the good things also about COVID was that as scientists, we typically operate in a bubble or in a test tube, if I may, whereby, we want to innovate within that test tube. The results are good, and we have not learned the skill of taking science out to the communities. One of the experiments that we are trying, and so in short, I don't necessarily have a clean answer for you, because this project we are still starting out, is crafting community engagement and outreach with the lessons coming up from COVID, and taking bringing the communities into understanding their experiences, and understanding how we can strengthen the communities to be part of the science and development. So it's something that is still at an experimental stage. I think in China, they have managed to do some of the projects whereby they incorporate the community, but allow the community to develop their own science communication projects, so that the communities can be the ones that are leading in how they think they can understand science and translate the scientific findings in order to find themselves in that myriad of science evolution or science development. So I think what it prompts us to do, it's really to move away from the silos. I think the issue of silos as well, it's something that in our space as scientists and researchers have talked about a lot, but then we have really seen the impact of the silos during the COVID-19 and vaccines disbursements. Thanks.
Any further questions? Okay, and any online? Okay, well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Sekhejane. I apologize if I haven't said that correctly. We really appreciate that it's a little bit later in the evening and you have enriched our symposium greatly. And we actually do look forward to inviting you to University of Waterloo sometime in the future so we can expand on this topic and look for ways of, you had mentioned collaboration, not only in technology, but also in the key areas for inclusion and economic development. So if the audience can join me in thanking Dr. Sekhejane again, we really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for inviting and hosting me. I wish you the successful deliberations.
Thank you. Have a great evening. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Bye.